Magandang araw sa ating lahat. On behalf of the team, I would like to welcome everyone to our artist talk session today featuring Mr. Karl Castro and his bamboo installation, Maytubig. This event is organized to not only invite you all to the Benilde Open exhibit, but also to create a space where we can connect, learn, and engage with artists and creatives. In this session, Carl opens up the process behind My Too Big, from time spent with fishermen in Talim Island to forms inspired by the salambao and sakag. The work comes together through memory, labor, and the simple act of gathering. Part of his ongoing series, Locus Pocus, My Too Big invites us to pause, to sit, to stay, to remember what was once there, and to imagine what public space can still become. Today, we'll get to know more about his creative process, inspirations, and the story behind this work. But before that, let's first hear from the people behind making spaces like this possible. To formally introduce the organization behind this initiative, please welcome Ms. Leah Rasay as she shares with us the story behind Husay and its mission to support the creative industries. Ms. Leah Rasay, good morning po. The floor is yours.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. Happy no work day, hopefully, for everyone. So we'd like to acknowledge and thank Carl's partners and collaborators who made this conversation or this artist talk possible. Good morning po kay Prof. Dindin Araneta, the Benilde Center for Campus Exhibitions, and the team behind Benilde Open 2026. And andito rin po si concerned artists of the Philippines and also sila Isla de Kubo with Sir Felix and Miss Helen Arambulo. And all our friends and friends of friends nila Carl and the participants joining us today. So I'm Leah Rasay from Husay and part of Carl's management team. So with Husay, we're building what we call an ecosystem for creatives because meaningful work like Carl's doesn't happen in isolation. And it involves not just the artists, but also the systems, support, and people behind the work. So may three main parts po si Husay. So we have Husay Ahensya, where we work with clients on mission-driven creative projects. And then may Nagmamausay, how our podcast and our creative community where we engage with artists, cultural workers, industry stakeholders, and across creative industries. And then finally, itong manager husay. So your business support services partner and that takes care of you and your creative career. So manager husay focuses on supporting the life of the artist. So because many creatives, there are a lot of things happening behind the scenes. So may contracts, taxes, bookings, project coordination, may finances, timelines, and relationships. So these are all necessary, but that parang they can take time away or energy away from the work itself. So our role is to help carry that layer of work depending on what's needed. Or with this case, depende kung ano yung kailanganin ni Carl for his work. So we also help bring in other creatives when a project requires more hands. So whether design, writing, production, or even mga performers, this allows us to work more collaboratively and across disciplines because we believe creative work becomes stronger or when it is shared and supported, not done alone. So in many ways, this connects directly to what we're here today, to what we're here for today. So because Made Too Big is also about systems, memory, labor, and what makes work or public space possible. So thank you for being here and we're excited for you to know or learn more from Carl like we do. Marami kaming natututunan kay Carl about Made Too Big, the process, the people, and the story behind the work. Good morning, and thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much po for that, no, Miss Leah, for sharing about Husay. So, ano po, joining us here today is also Sir Franco Brobio from the Concerned Artists of the Philippines to share with us the association's advocacy. Hi, Sir Franco. Good morning po.
Hello, good morning. So I'll just talk about what we do at the Concerned Artists of the Philippines, which si Carl is a part of. Tapos Specifically rin yung immersion program namin na nakaakibat sa Maytubig. Since part of yung ginawa ni Carl sa Maytubig ay ibahagi yung experience ng mga fisherfolk given the people who created the installation are from Talim Island. So, yun. Paglayag at Paglaya yung name ng program namin. Tapos recently, nagbukas kami ng exhibit sa UPC SWCD na yung name ay Ang Tubig na Tahanan. So hopefully everyone can also visit that. It's up until May 9. So I'll just introduce CAP. So CAP is an organization of progressive cultural workers. We've been organizing artists since 1984. Isa sa mga nagsimula nito ay yung national artist natin si Dino Broca. So, these are the kinds of activities we do at CAP. On the upper right, you can see a performance during the sauna. We join mobilizations where we carry our calls for a better society. But also, we organize immersions to connect artists to our local sectors. And we do collective art production where we create art that hoping to serve the people. Yeah. So specifically, the project I want to talk about is yung Paglega at Paglaya. So our immersion program, we bring artists who want to do socially engaged cultural work to basic sectors such as with the fisherfolk, with farmers, and with political detainees. But for this program specifically, we engaged with fisherfolk communities from Navotas, Rizal, and Cavite. Interestingly, we went to a community in Binangonan, which has a very which is beside Laguna Lake, and that's where they fish. And they have the same experiences as the fisher folk who created Carl's installation by Tubig, since they both fish from the same body of water. They experience the same problems with the degrading ecosystem, difficulties with the LGU, and those kinds of threats to their livelihood. So we after our engagements with the community, initial engagements with the community where we stayed there to learn about their life and their livelihood, we continue to engage through in different ways. So in the left, you can see CAP members Archie Oclos and Kiefer Indosiano creating a mural in the community. And on the right, Karl Castro, as a board member of the Concerned Artists of the Philippines, along with Edge Oyanguren, helped file a petition against the reclamation of Manila Bay. Yeah, so these are the kind of support that we also do with the communities that we engage with. And then for the project, because the goal of the project is one, to amplify what is happening to the fisher folk around the Philippines, but also we want artists to be able to expand their artistic practice and to also learn from the communities that we engage with. So this helps them see the real value of art and to see the possibilities that art can that we can use art for. So we staged a bunch of workshops. These workshops were designed to give the community skills on how to produce their own art, but it also served as a discursive tool um, for the artists and the community to learn about each other and to really learn about the daily struggles of the fisher folk. Yeah. So yun, you can see here some people painting, yung pagturo nung songwriting workshops, ganun. And then yun, recently, we just culminated this long program. And we staged an exhibition featuring the outputs of the communities. It was quite amazing. Sometimes songs would be written in just one day, and we were able to create maybe 6 songs, and then lots of different visual art outputs. And also it was very interesting to see how the artists who joined us, the cap artists, were able to translate their experiences into works of art as well. So yun, we invite you all to attend the exhibit. It is open at the UPCSWCD until May 9. And yun, parts of Carl's installation are also exhibited there. Yung one of the test prints from yung banderitas na nakasabit sa Maytubig ay nandun. Yung original Gyotaku prints na gawa ni Voltaire Guray, kung saan na translate into these banderitas before they were printed onto fabric. You can also see them there. And of course, yung documentation din na may tubig, because these projects are also very much interconnected. And finally, we would like to invite anyone who wants to join CAP. We are open for anyone who wants to join. We're cultural workers, fans of the arts, and of course, artists who want to learn about art or orient their art to a more socially engaged practice. So yung QR dyan, it will link to our link tree. You can see some of our projects there. And the membership form is also there. So yun lang naman. Salamat sa husay sa pag-host ng talk na to. And salamat, Carl, at congrats. Ang ganda-ganda ng installation, and we're so happy to be a part of this. Thank you.
And thank you so much for that presentation, Sir Franco. Now, let us hear from Miss Geraldine Araneta as she shares and officially invite everyone to the Benilde Open 2026 Extensions of Nature exhibit. Good morning po ulit, Miss Araneta.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Please call me Dindin.
No.
Thank you very much for inviting us to be part of the talk this morning. On behalf of the Benilde Open conveners, we would like to express our gratitude to Carl for writing and submitting a proposal. During the selection process of the independent jury, his proposal was unanimous among the jury in selecting it for the Benilde Open. To give a background, Benilde Open Art and Design was conceptualized to provide grants to the creative community in the Philippines, specifically for unrealized projects. This initiative is committed to supporting thoughtful and innovative ideas that may otherwise have been left as studies and in the imagination due to a lack of resources or institutional support. There's a tendency to view the unrealized project as a void, but we see it as a blueprint. We draw from curator Hans Ulrich Obrist's concept of unbuilt roads, the understanding that the history of our culture is shaped just as much by the projects that didn't happen as those that did. These are the invisible ideas that often hold the most transformative power, existing as intellectual markers for what our society could become. This is also reflected in Albert Einstein's observation that imagination is more important than knowledge. For knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world, stimulating progress and giving birth to evolution. This perspective suggests that while knowledge is the map where we have been, intellectual curiosity is the engine that drives us beyond the map. It is the restless desire to ask, what if, that transforms a static study into a visionary proposal. So by bridging the gap between aspiration and realization, the goal of Benilde Open Design and Art is to provide a platform for these ambitious works. We're pleased to support this process and look forward to the further development of Carl's ideas. For more information, do follow Benilde Open via Instagram and Facebook. Thank you very much for inviting us to be here this morning.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that heartwarming message, Miss Dindin. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. It is my pleasure to introduce our featured artist for today, Mr. Karl Castro, the artist behind My Too Big. Karl Castro is a transdisciplinary artist, designer, and cultural worker whose work explores memory, power, and public space. His design and research practice translates hidden histories into tools that speak to the present. He has exhibited in the Philippines and internationally, with works shown at institutions such as the Vargas Museum, Ayala Museum, and Spaces in Japan. In 2025, he initiated Locus Pocus with the Urban Forestry Institute de Liman at the University of the Philippines, an ongoing series of site-specific installations that transform overlooked spaces into places for gathering, rest, and reflection. Let us also welcome architect Eldry Infante of Mede Studio, a collaborator of Sir Carl, as he also shares his experience in doing the Maytubig project.
Hi, I'm architect Eldry Infante from Mede Studio, an architecture and design practice based in Pampanga, Philippines. I'm the architectural designer and collaborator for the Locus Pocus series, the first one you find in UP Diliman, and of course, this time Maytubig at Benilde Open and CSB Design Plus Arts Campus in Manila. Sir Carl and I have been longtime collaborators. I consider him one of my design mentors, and this Locus Pocus series, I think, is the first time that both our practice and sensibilities are visually apparent and meshed together. It is a structure, it has dimensions, it's an installation, and it's an intersection of research, of history, it has material properties, it's a conduit of advocacies, it's storytelling. My too big it is a lot of things, partly informed by my past work with Sir Carl and our individual work, and my too big at large, as Sir Carl put it, a collaboration and process of coming together. So I think it's very fitting for us to work on this project. As an architect, this is not a typical builder work for me because our usual angle is creating for permanence, for rigidity, for solidity, for longevity. Installation work still strives for that, especially the Locus Pocus series and the dialogue on public spaces. It wants to cultivate, but on a time-based approach. Impermanence, or mga pansamantalang bagay, ephemerality, I think is one of the biggest values of my tubig. And impermanence, based on my usual mode as a designer and builder, is sort of freeing. It is less intense, as you can imagine, versus, let's say, creating residential building, but it's particularly freeing for the Locus Pocus as a mode of delivery. And we can relate to this. We can relate this to every installation work that wants to, as I've liked to describe it, and goes with the water theme of my tubig, to create a ripple in the water. Small-scale fleeting works produce less material and structural pressure. For you find and my tubig, we embrace a rudimentary approach to building. If you've seen both works, we did not strive to impress with structural capability for many reasons. We wanted the viewer to understand and relate to the structure by seeing what it's made of and how it is made. We want to exemplify a mode of efficiency by simplicity. When you create something that is easy to make, you create something that's easy to repair, maintain, and rebuild. And we wanted to build with fewer materials as well that can be reused or returned to the ground. The bamboo frame of my tubig is a result of the simple consideration of the forces from its own assembly, exterior forces that may act on it during the exhibit, and the function it needs to serve. It's just a pair of triangular frames supporting a next frame, supporting a fishnet. No, it's a natural structural progression from ground to lightness, a simple solution to what is only required. And that is where material pressure is alleviated as well. So much of our current materials today are heavily processed. They need a lot of resources to make and acquire. So Sir Carl set the parameter that we use materials as they're found. And the only manipulation that you can see in the structure's assembly is only material cutting. And if we use synthetic materials, there are reuse plans set up. For example, my tubig's fishnet canopy followed our builder's specification, as they will use it for actual fishing afterward. And during the vernissage of Benilde Open last weekend, I received many questions about where we source our bamboo. It's Isla de Kubo, Kubo makers and fishermen who harvested the poles in Talim Island. Bamboo is abundant on the island, which they also use for fish cages. And so you can imagine their knowledge and care for that specific material. We've also found a good dialogue with them during the making of the installation because they have their own way of working with bamboo. And this constant back and forth with them in terms of details, in terms of design, discussions on stability and strength, produce a co-designing process. And which is very apparent when you see the lashing and bamboo joinery of Maytubig. And we're happy for them to have an imprint on the component of the work because it ties back to the congregation intersection of bodies, forces, stories, experiences that Maytubig wants to make and collect. And I'm happy that you can see that on every lashing and joinery, it's a product of both intent and experience in making. And as a space, Maytubig invites rest and reflection. This is a mainstay of the Locus Pocus series. It's about proximity and participation, which are very important factors for it. The person is invited to linger and spend time, to reflect on their place within the installation, their relationship with time, the surfaces, the materials, and the components, and the role in the larger environment in which they live in and where the installation is. For Maytubig, there are more modules for interaction and conversation. No, there are two types of papag. There's a group doing assembly and items for comfort, and you can wrap yourself literally in historical imagery and collective art within the shelter of a cloud-like fishnet hovering above you. So the sheltering mode serves the visitors and students within the campus, while the prolonged reflection taps into the exhibition mode of Benilde Open. Locus Pocus series will always be about who gets to participate either as maker or user, who can access creating or using public spaces, who can access technology and information, who can access enough triggers for meaningful connection and reflection. This series of small scale fleeting works is also a space of generosity, offering more with less, offering impermanence as a tool to engage in meaningful collective activity. And I'm really happy and proud to be one of the many people who made this project possible. I'm happy that Circle created this congregation to highlight not only the makers but also the making. And there's so much learning and care that continues to revolve around this project. And I hope that you can see it in person in Benilde Open. And thank you, Benilde Open, for trusting us, trusting the vision of Locus Pocus and Maytubig in particular. And thank you for spending your Saturday morning, everyone here during this session. And apologies if I can be live here, but I do hope we can continue to gather through many more collective works. And I hope you all enjoy your weekend. Bye.
Ayan po. Hello po, Sir Karl Castro. Good morning po.
Good morning po. Salamat, Eldry. So, sinabi na po niya lahat. Joke. Hindi. Before I start talking about my work, I want to thank everyone who helped make this program and this artwork possible. So, Benilde Open for the grant and the space. Husay for helping me with my daily life as an artist and a designer, and for organizing this program, and Concerned Artists of the Philippines sa ating mga sama-samang gawain, including Maytubig, lalo na I'm not there to, you know, physically install it. So thank you so much. Truly yung projects like this are a collective effort, and it's really uh, magical to see that it comes together. So I want to expound on the ideas behind the work. Eldry has mentioned a lot of the design ideas that inform the actual structure. So I want to talk more about the journey. Say, next slide, please. So this is our installation at the 12th floor of the Benilde Design and Arts campus. And so uh, it's the installation is essentially a site-responsive installation. So while it's part of a series with certain ideas stringing through it, it's iterative, and it's also site-specific. So in particular, we looked into the ecological history of Benilde, the site of Benilde and Malate and Manila. And this work also explores the intersection of placemaking, environmental advocacy, and collective making. So this work, while it's ascribed to me as an individual, is also really the work of a collective, including fishermen from Talim Island, who we worked with in the previous iteration, and the Concerned Artists of the Philippines, and Pamalakaya, who is an organization of fishers. Um, my goal for this installation is really to create the conditions for embodied and hurried reflection on the historical conditions which give birth to where we are now. Literally the place of Benilde, but also where we are in his history also. And I also want to make a case for public spaces that are, as LG mentioned, generous, that are open, um, in many ways, in many layers. Yeah, next slide. So for those who aren't familiar, this is the Benilde campus, the Design and Arts campus of Benilde. It's in Malate, Manila, which is a historical area. Um, and you can kind of feel the heat already here in this picture, you know. So Manila is one of the densest cities in the world. Um, and the concentration of development in the area creates an urban heat island effect. So it's kind of hard to imagine that Benilde, the campus or Taft Avenue, is so close to waterways like Manila Bay, or esteros. So that's what I wanted to dig into. So if you compare this picture, next slide, please. So this is an archival image of Manila Bay from Malate. It shows a bathhouse, 'di ba? So mukha siyang Siargao. Pero this is actually Malate, the beach in Malate. At the turn of the century in 1900. So you can imagine how different it was then and how much has changed in just a little over a century. Next slide, please. This is a beach at Malate. So right now, what we see as Manila Bay is a series of reclamations already. So hindi na siya beach. Well, may fake Dolomite Beach, but that was imported from Cebu and that's artificial. So here you can see the beach at Malate when it was still a real beach where people swam, where fishermen fished. Uh, and actually, during the American period, um, it became popular for the foreign elite to actually build homes around this area because it had a beach view. So for context, the De La Salle University system arrived during the American period, like higher education institutions in the Philippines. So it was established in 1911. It moved to the Manila site in 1921. And the College of St. Benilde was actually only established in 1980. Yeah, next slide, please. So this is an image from around 1926, and it says it's labeled fishermen's huts in Manila Bay. So what we see now that Manila Bay is like, parang it's a port, uh, it's uh,
I
it's a
know
drink
that.
water, but yung there used to be a lot of fisher folk in the area around Manila Bay. And there are more images in the installation to show this. Yan. Next slide. So Manila, as we know it now, is very different. It's a land city, but before all the layers of colonization, it was a water city. It was a hydrological community that was organized around the Pasig River. And historically, of course, very old civilizations um, prospered or emerged around waterways precisely because the water was their main means of transport, their means of drinking, of irrigation. So that's why also the area around Manila and Tondo was very old. Um, and I want you to remember this image. This is an image of Malacanang with salambao fishers in front. Um, So Malacanang, which is the seat of power of the Philippines, is in the district of San Miguel. And these are the districts that emerged precisely because they had access to river networks like the estero networks. And during the American period, Manila was called the Venice of the East. I'm not saying, you know, that to romanticize it as Venice and what it could have been, but Venice is a very European imaginary. It looks actually kind of like Malabon, which is partly underwater for most of the time. But yun, so you can imagine that being called Venice of the East had geographical basis, that it was really water-based. But also there was a lot of imperial imagination at work in imagining the city. Yeah. We'll go back to this image later, so I hope you remember it. So the esteros of Malate um, show that I looked up old maps as early as I can, and it really shows that these maps really show that the Manila we know now was really a lot of like mud flats and shallow fishing grounds and tidal waterways, mga mangrove areas, mga salt marsh. Uh, and that kind of explains why I guess it's always flooding, maybe because water, parang nandun yung tubig, water was there, and it probably returns there for a reason. The green star that you kind of see now is where the Benilde Design and Arts campus is approximately located. So you can see that it's really located in a network of waterways and shallow areas. Next. So I want you to visualize this. So this is a clip from a 1938 film, one of the earliest documentaries actually, that show Manila. So let's watch it.
Manila, capital and largest city of the Commonwealth of the Philippines, rises on the shore of the bay into which the Spaniards sailed in 1570, and where in 1898 Admiral Dewey achieved one of the greatest naval victories in history, the Battle of Manila Bay. As headquarters for American commercial interests in the Orient, Manila has been transformed from a sleepy Spanish town into a modern city. Inter-island ships, serving the archipelago of some 7,000 islands, berth along the quays of the Pasig River that flows through the center of the city. From the sterns fly both the American and Philippine flags, for the Commonwealth government is still under the protection and advice of the United States. Much of the local trading is carried on in cascos, flat-bottom boats which are poled through the many canals and waterways of Manila. Each casco has its family, whose life is spent beneath its thatched roof of bamboo or palm, veritable water gypsies in a climate that is kind to all. Manila is really three cities in one. Old Tondo, home of the Philippine masses, modern Manila, born of American development, and Intramuros, walled city of the Spaniards. The last, built on the south shore at the mouth of the Pasig River, is surrounded by 2.5 miles of walls, which, begun in 1590, were for centuries bulwarks against invasions. The moat encircling the walls was filled in for sanitary reasons by the Americans, and is today a drill ground, a recreation area, and a golf course. The walls and bastions are excellently preserved, and have withstood even earthquakes which at times laid ruin the old city.
Yan. So, um, there are three things that are very interesting for me in that clip. Yung una, the announcer described Manila as the headquarters of American interests in the Orient. So, um, very telling yun, di ba? That's where it's coming from. Second, they described it as three cities in one, and you can see that in their description, there is a separate city of the masses and a separate city of modern Manila. And again, this is something we see in our landscape now. You see the very posh areas like Bonifacio Global City, like Makati, like Ortigas, and surrounding it are the areas where the masses live, where the workers live, the workers who actually work and maintain these elite spaces of modernity. They live separately from that area. And the third is the framing of sanitation and So Intramuros had a moat before that was created by the Spanish to separate the interior from the rest of the city. But the Americans filled it in because they were saying that it's unsanitary. So it became now it's a golf course, which will become hopefully a public park soon. So it was also the sense of superiority of the Americans that they're more hygienic, more organized, um, more cosmopolitan, and more civilized than even the Spanish, even the Filipinos for sure. That really these ideas helped shape the city. So today, the esteros are still there somehow. So in this map, you can kind of see the location of the DLSU main campus and the Design and Arts campus of the College of St. Benilde. So the Estero Maytubig is actually on the border of the DLSU campus on the left. And Estero de Tripa de Galina is the longest estero in Manila. And it's also very near Benilde. So it's kind of sandwiched between these waterways. So you can imagine that that the area where Benilde stands now, um, because of its proximity to existing waterways, must have had a much richer connection with the water before. Next slide. So this is an official campus map from the De La Salle University website. So on the north border, you can actually see the Estero de Metubig. So it's bordering the La Salle campus. And if you look at historical photographs, the waterway is actually quite prominent. Next slide. So, what I discovered in the short period that I was able to focus on this research, was that the water was not really lost. We always think that it's lost because of development. It's like a passive thing that happens, but it was actually taken. The water city, the idea of a water city, was deliberately and systematically unmade across several colonial regimes, from the Spanish to the American to even the neo-colonial government of the Filipinos. And these were ideas surrounding um, infrastructure like drainage or commerce, like where should the ports be, or hygiene, how sanitary should these areas be. And of course, power, that you have power to shape the landscape. And what replaced it was not really something better. The land city is not necessarily better than a water city, but it's just more legible to those who are in power. So it's more controllable, it's more profitable, it's even more acceptable to their norms. Um, Next slide. Uh, so to imagine how things started, this is an archival photograph from the National Library of Spain. It shows an early construction of esteros in Pasig River. So of course, this is completely unrecognizable now. We can't imagine Pasig River looking like this, but this is how it started. So Spanish colonial commerce clogged the esteros with silt and waste in the 1820s. And when the Americans arrived, they said they were like cesspools already. So in 1909, they commissioned a new drainage system, which again made them even less of waterways and more like canal. Canal na lang sila. And they reorganized the city. This was an important shift. They reorganized the city around roads instead of waterways. So before, like Pasig River was the EDSA of the Metro Manila, the city, but now it's EDSA, you know. So that was a big shift, and that happened during the American period. So you can kind of see here what was life like during in an estero. So this is a very interesting pair of photographs from the University of Michigan collection. So this is an estero in normal weather. So you can kind of note the water level of the river and the houses beside it. Yan. Next slide. This was the estero after a typhoon in 1900. So tumaas yung tubig, the water rose almost to the level of the banks, kind of flooded the area, but the houses are still safe because they're on stilts. So it's this kind of sensibility of living in a water city that's kind of lost. when you convert to a land city. And actually, contemporary studies show that it's not just sea level rise that's causing the flooding, but it's actually the draining of the groundwater that makes Manila so prone to flooding because the water makes the ground sink. Comparing the esteros that you saw, which looks like a river, um, this was the conversion during the American period in the colonial and the Commonwealth period. From waterways, they become drainage, they become culverts. They look like mga canal that you see in the United States, you know, and they reorganized this was in this illustration. This is the image of a sanitary barrio. So it's organized around a grid, which was again something that was introduced in the Spanish period with canals. So this kind of looks like how our cities are organized. Next. Um, Another important turn was the Marcos dictatorship because they created the idea of Metro Manila. So before that, it was really just Manila and other cities or towns. But in 1975, President Marcos created Metro Manila as an entity and appointed his wife, Imelda Marcos, as governor. And she held that position for the whole dictatorship. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of power, there's a lot of funds in that scope, you know, when you control the whole area. Mrs. Marcos imagined Manila as a city of man. So this is again a very Greek ideals. Um, and that and her vision for Manila as governor included primarily flood control and beautification, which included a lot of massive reclamation in Manila Bay. So you can see here on the left, this was the cultural center of the Philippines complex reclamation when it was starting. Next slide. So flood control and martial law. I mean, now flood control is a buzzword, but the relationship between corruption and authoritarian rule and flood control runs way back. So in 1972, there was a very strong storm called Gloring. So the international name was Rita. And people described it as like 40 days and 40 nights of rain. So it killed more than 600 people and displaced hundreds of thousands. So this was actually the heavy floods and the devastation it caused was actually one of the reasons cited why Marcos declared martial law. Um, because you know it would be easier for the state to implement these remedies to address these concerns. So what happened to the dwellers? And I have to emphasize that he really put a lot of blame on the urban poor who lived around these dwellings, as if this was not a systematic problem, you know, of them having no other place but to live there. So not only did they displace, not only these dwellers, the poorest of the poor who also were service workers to the elite spaces, not only were they displaced by the storm, but they were also displaced by the succeeding policies of the government. Next slide. Um, the next big turn actually in the story of reclamation was actually during the Duterte era. So during the Duterte era, um, he shifted approval power over reclamation projects from the NEDA to the Philippine Reclamation Authority, which he then placed directly under the office of the president. So essentially, from being under the care of a economics and development department, reclamation became something directly under the president. And as proof of that, of the 17 approved projects on the Philippine Reclamation Authority's list in 2024, 16 of them, all but one, got their notices to proceed under Duterte. And many of these projects include huge projects in Navotas, in Manila, in Pasay, in Cavite, And these were the very same projects that the fisher folk who we interacted with during our immersions with the concerned artists of Philippines, these were the same projects causing concern in their communities. Yeah. So you can kind of see here in the previous slide the Horizon Manila project, which is imagined to be a new community to extend the space of Manila. So to have a better scale of these projects, so this is a diagram by the Department of Environment and Natural Resources itself. Um, they map out a lot of things here, but the things on the water are seabed quarries, and the encircled outlines are reclamation projects. And the other dots are environmentally significant areas like nesting grounds for sea turtles or mangroves or wetlands or protected areas. So it boggles the mind really that these projects are so close together. And you can imagine they're just on one body of water. If you destroy one area, of course it will affect the protected areas. You know, it's not a they're not compartmentalized. They share the same ecology. Um, and it's huge. It's 9,000 hectares. The dynamic here is that the seabed quarrying is used, so they're essentially mining the seabed for construction fill to create the reclamation projects nearer to the shore. And the scientists have told us seabed quarrying is irreparable. Like literally, nature will not heal. When you quarry the seabed, it will die. The organisms that live in the seabed, they die. They don't get replaced. They just die. So essentially, this is killing the Manila Bay to build more artificial islands. And it's 9,000 hectares. It's so huge. It's the equivalent of 20,000 Benilde Design and Arts campuses. 20,000. Okay, next slide. This is a map from 2018. So this kind of illustrates better the projects, reclamation projects in Manila Bay. As you can see, sobrang laki niya. It's huge. Um, the the new Manila International Airport project is somewhere in the north in that big swath. There's another Sangley Airport project around Cavite. There are various residential multi-use residential projects in Navotas and in Manila and in Pasay. So this is crazy, you know, and this is a map again from the Philippine Reclamation Authority, and their press release in responding to allegations of that they should do better, they say they're not the proponent, they're also not the implementer, they're just managing it. So essentially, they're washing their hands off of any responsibility, even if they are the agency responsible. Yes, there are mangroves areas where the reclamation is. So this is the city now. Sige, next slide. An aerial view of the city. You can kind of see the huge triangular reclamation project, which will become uh, a site of more towers. And near that is the CCP complex, which was again another reclaimed area. So this is the area where Benilde uh, lives. Okay, next slide. So Franco mentioned that I was among the petitioners for the Supreme Court to stop reclamation in Manila Bay. And in the response of the city of Manila, they said, did not Singapore, another Asian country, greatly benefit from reclamation? So why are we taking it away from Manila to do reclamation? So for context, Singapore indeed has grown 25% of its land as an island state through land reclamation. And to be fair, for its size, it maintains a high level of biodiversity, one of the top in the world actually, for its size, which is very small. Um, but in doing that, they intentionally lost their coastal forests and their mangrove swamps entirely. And they also destroyed around 60% of their coral reefs. And there has been a lot of issue and discussion among this in Singapore that, um, they're dubiously carried out the environmental impact assessments. Usually, economists or the government would argue that the benefits outweigh the disruption, and that's the very same logic that Manila is using. However, it's not the same. The Philippines is not Singapore. The Philippines is one of 18 mega diverse countries on Earth, and these 18 countries contain two-thirds of the world's biodiversity. The Philippines is also at the center of the Coral Triangle, which is the global epicenter of marine life, with at least 3,000 species, 700 threatened species, and all these ecosystems, again, they're not compartmentalized. They're part of the same waterway, water ecology. They anchor marine life across the entire Indo-Pacific. So in this chart, you can see that in ASEAN, the Philippines has the third most Ramsar sites. So these are protected wetlands, which are important. So it's really ridiculous for Manila to argue rights like there's Singapore. Unang-una, Singapore is a state, Manila is a city. It's not the same. Second, um, what happens in Manila doesn't just stay in Manila, it affects the whole Manila Bay, which spans different regions, different cities. It's not just fishermen in Manila Bay. Maybe Manila successfully eradicated its fishermen, but there are fishermen in Bulacan, in Navotas, in Cavite. They will be affected by whatever reclamation projects will be happening in Manila because it is the same sea. Um, so beyond that, also, this is not just national patrimony. It is obviously globally important. This is global biological inheritance. It's the inheritance of the world. So we can't just decide to eradicate it when it has global implications. So this is the difference between a land mindset, a capitalist mindset, versus an ecological, people-oriented, environmentally oriented mindset. And it's very evident in the reply of the city of Manila. Okay, next slide. So it's not just in Manila Bay. So in Laguna Lake, which is the largest lake in the Philippines, there are 22 reclamation projects planned as of 2024. Many, of course, without proper consultation and despite some standing suspension orders. How does that happen? For example, projects like the New Manila Airport or the Boracay Bridge by San Miguel. These are unsolicited, meaning sila lang yung nakaisip nito. They thought of proposing it, and since no one challenged it, then they get the green light to go for it. It's that ridiculous. So the problem now with Laguna Lake is actually strangely framed under renewable energy. So there are floating solar projects. So you can see this is a testing um, solar project in Laguna Lake itself. Um, Essentially, they're floating solar panels over the lake. And it's huge. Okay, so this is you see the picture, it's just a test, but what are approved or proposed by three corporations. Sun Asia has 1,000 hectares. AC Energy of Ayala Group has 800 hectares, and Vena Energy of Singapore has 200 hectares. That's a lot of lake to be covered by solar panels. And of course, I mean, if ever you've gone to the beach or even owned an aquarium, you know that, ecologies need sunlight. So if it's gonna be covered, what's gonna happen to the ecology underneath? It's very strange, I mean, how does this work? So what happens to the fisher folk who rely on Laguna Lake. Um, Aside from that, there are wind turbine projects and dam projects nearby in cities, in towns and cities surrounding the lake, which will also affect the lake ecology. So it's crazy, you know. So it's the same logic, development logic in the bay and in the lake. Next. Now, when we look at the seat of power, this is very recent actually. The state dining room at Malacanang was recently relined with new wallpaper, redesigned, and it depicts colonial era fishing, a colonial era Philippines. 'Di ba? It looks quite colonial. It reminds you of Lozano paintings. Um, and it portrays the Pasig River as a, you know, very lush thing. And this is very strange because um, firstly, it does not look like this anymore. So this is like harking towards a past that has been destroyed. Next slide. But also this is also more concerning because this kind of wallpaper is not, you know, it may be seen as elegant or, you know, classy, but that's precisely because it was used by the colonial elite um, to integrate Asian Pacific aesthetics into what is imperial culture. Essentially, they use this kind of wallpaper to display in their homes imperial culture. Like we have colonized these areas. We've been there. They're exotic and they're ours. So this is an example from um, the the collection of New South Wales, uh, and uh, yun. So going back to the image I showed at the start. So this is from the new wallpaper in Malacanang. So this is the salambao fishing in front of Malacanang, which of course isn't happening anymore because development has practically killed fishing there. And next slide, another bit of the wallpaper shows the Kalayaan Hall of Malacanang with, you know, these dancing natives and colorful natives. And, you know, it is very troubling that the state will essentially take on a colonial gaze and make it its own. That is my concern here. So aside from it being not based in reality, you know, and literally a smoke screen wallpaper to distract us from the terrible reality of our waterways, it's also a colonial gaze. Yun. So going back to the installation, Eldry has described a lot of the design considerations. So it's a large bamboo structure with cushions. There are microfiber textiles that are on which historical photographs are printed that you can actually interact with. I'm kind of amused that no one is actually taking it from the beam and, you know, using it and interacting with it, but it's designed to be like that way. Next slide. Uh, and one thing that's very I've been thinking about is that is it sculpture or is it architecture? Because when I proposed it, I chose to frame it as an analog kinetic sculpture. And kinetic sculpture, when we think of kinetic sculpture, we think of Alexander Calder's mobiles, we think of David Medallia's Cloud Canyons, which was recently exhibited at the MCAD at the LSU. But but my work actually also looks like architecture because it's something usable. It's sheltering, it's public space. But for me, that's the essential difference that I want to use. For me, it's sculpture that kind of looks like architecture instead of architecture that's kind of sculptural. Sculpture has no inherent assumption of use, like of dwelling, of function. Sculpture can be anything, and I think that's what's more important to me, the fluidity, because that in that fluidity that it also escapes the things we associate with architecture, with smart cities, like optimization, like measuring, like data gathering, like very specific functions. It's the fluidity of the space that's more important to me, and I think that's where the humanity lies. That's where the addition or the increase in human dignity lies. Using bamboo and manual lashing was also important to me because it was essentially the design counterpart of touching grass or of going forest bathing. It's the familiarity with these materials and these techniques that's important to me. Um, Especially since I noticed in the first iteration that many city dwellers who grew up in the city are not familiar with these sensations. When did you last sleep on a papag, or outdoors or on a hammock? When did you last step into a structure that was only lashed together by rope? When did you last see a fishing net or even touch it? So it's these sensations that I want to bring back to the body and make available, so that in hopes that maybe that will um, unleash a new sensitivity to the ecology in an age of air conditioning and cushions and virtual consumption. Maybe these sensations might create a rupture in the attention economy. Next. So the series temporary site-specific installations that activate underutilized or transform a gallery space into something else. And we want to highlight rest, reflection, and community-driven action. Um, the series, and this is something I thought about while applying to responding to the open call of the Benilde Open. One of its propositions is counter technicalization. So it's against the smart city logic. So right now we're being pushed to accept smart cities as the future. Smart cities meaning um, it's heavily surveilled. Your actions are monitored and counted as data. Recently, I went into a smart city exhibition where, your house can tell you if your health is okay or not, and it can make recommendations about, what exercise or what food you should take, things like that. Essentially, that's what a smart city is. And I think there's something dehumanizing about that logic. So the idea of Locus Pocus is to create temporary installations that propose counter technicalization. Next slide. Another proposition of the series is placemaking as a medium. So for me, placemaking is not an end. Usually for developers, placemaking is an end, that you make a place better. But for me, placemaking is a medium, meaning it's a way of knowing, it's a way of investigation. So by creating a place, um, a sense of place, it can be a form of asking questions. The idea of placemaking emerged in the 70s, and essentially it says that a good place is not really something particularly tied to aesthetics or surfaces. It's more about use. You can imagine, right? Some of the places you're most fond of are actually not very pretty places, but they're places that you feel most at home with, that you feel most connected to, that you have the best memories in. And that's because, um, according to the idea of placemaking, a good place is where you can do at least 10 activities, 10 different activities. And its success is measured by these four ideas of sociability, of uses and activities, of comfort and image, and access and linkages. Things that we know are very hard to come by in Metro Manila. And when you see these metrics, you can kind of already have an idea of what Metro Manila is lacking. It lacks accessibility, it lacks different uses, you even lack spaces in particular. So I want to use placemaking as a medium, where like using oil paint to render a landscape in a certain way. I want to use placemaking as a way to respond or to see or to sense a place. Next slide. Another important component of my installation are the prints. So these are Yotaku prints, which essentially are making prints with fish or sea life themselves. And these were paired with handprints. So we did a small workshop, as you can see here, where we tried to mimic fish using our handprints. So you can see here Sir Felix and Ma'am Helen um, testing it out. And one thing I learned from here is actually they have a much better grasp of what sea life looks like. I remember when I made shrimp, they look like cooked shrimp because that's mostly how I see shrimp. But of course, they're different in when they're alive and out in the wild. They have a different color and format. Yeah. Okay. Next slide. Um, Another thing that this project made me think about is my artistic practice in relation to my hometown. So my hometown is Angono. It's known as the art capital of the Philippines, quote unquote. It's also a lakeside town beside the Laguna Lake, so it's not that far from Talim Island. And it has produced an extraordinary concentration of artists. We have two national artists, and their work is essentially inseparable from water. So you can see here, Juan Senson is one of the oldest art practitioners to emerge from Angono, and he emerged during the Hacienda period of the Spanish period. And this is he made one of the earliest representations of Laguna de Bay in the 1880s. The next is Carlos Botong Francisco, who you can see here represented by a painting of fishermen. So he was always around the bay, and he was also always exploring nature. And you can see the sensibility in the way when he represents historical murals, there are ripples that look like water and like air ripples that hold the composition together. And I also studied in my youth with two artist families, so the Blanco family and the Miranda family. And again, they're very known for this kind of imagery, the pastoral imagery or the mythological imagery that is connected to nature. So I guess this was also a kind of attempt on my part to contribute to that lineage of Angono and the lake and the water, but in my own way. Next slide. As Franco mentioned, this is connected to my choice to be one of the petitioners in GR number 277351, or a petition for writ of Kalikasan, because I realized that as an artist, there are so many things that you have to do outside of art making and exhibitions. And as someone who studied in the Philippine High School for the Arts, who benefited from state subsidy, and who essentially benefited from the creation of these spaces, which destroyed the livelihoods and the environment, I think it's my job to at least open the doors, help open the doors to reparation and renewal and rehabilitation, because it's not enough to just paint fisher folk or landscapes, because people are not creative prompts. Our art has to do more than just illustrate and to represent. It has to do much more. And artists have a lot to do beyond art making. uh, you know we're cultural workers. We're shaping cultures. We're shaping through our art, of course. It's not to say that the art we do isn't valuable. It is important, but there are so many things we have to do to shape culture, to create knowledge, to shape sensibilities that will lead us out of this. It's usually the sensibility that is important, because the sensibility will be the basis for any social action or change. You can't do something that you don't understand or instinctively understand. So that's what I think is the role of a cultural worker, to do things beyond art, to shape culture, and especially in times like this, to create a counterculture. Next slide. So Maytubig is a kinetic sculpture, it's temporary, and I think there's also value in temporary. There's freedom in, we always associate art with permanence, with immortalization. But for me, art that is temporary, that's ephemeral, that will only live in the archives or in memories is also very freeing, very important, and very meaningful. I like that it has a power to resist certain ideologies, like the ideology of collection, of exchange value, and that's why it's interesting for me. So, and it's also modular. It's very adaptable. It's built to be reconfigured. In fact, I think in these first two iterations of Locus Pocus, that reconfiguration capability is not really maximized because either we don't have a long enough duration for it to be reconfigured, or we didn't have the manpower to reconfigure it, but theoretically it can be. I think it's the work derives meaning from its movement. I don't think it's particularly meaningful because of its components, or its aesthetic impression, but because of what it opens up, the and how it can adapt to our needs. If you need to sleep, if you need to study, if you need to perform, if you need to read up, if you need to just hang out with your friends, if you need to talk serious, you can all do that in the space. And I think that's very important. And I know that, this installation will not turn the tide on reclamation. It will not change people's minds about the cities that they aspire towards. But by creating these spaces, hopefully, you hold space for things like rest. Like in the first place, we can't think about these things because we're so busy surviving. Every day. We can't think about the greater good. We can't think about survival beyond ourselves. So if we have spaces like this, which are dignified, which are open, which are free, and where you can really rest in public, it's not embarrassing to lie down. Um, I think a new rupture opens, a new opportunity opens, and I think that's really the value of the art. It can do that. I can't change it can't change the world, but it can help people come to terms with their environment, and maybe then these people will change the world. Something like that. Yeah. Next slide. So I hope my installation, however brief it lasts, will help us see the undercurrents shaping our daily existence. It makes us see Benilde, it makes us see Manila, it makes us see our landscape, our environment, our domestic habits and aspirations in a different way, because there are always layers underneath, assumptions, things we didn't think about that will make us rethink the way things are going. Yun. So yun lang. Marami pong salamat, and thank you for listening to my artist talk.
Ayan. So maraming salamat po, Sir Carl, for sharing with us the many things we don't know yet about Maytubig. Ang dami naming bagong natutunan mula sa history, geography, nature government. Kumbaga, di na lang ito naging tungkol sa mismong proyekto or essence ng art, kundi na rin sa sitwasyon ng bansa natin. At para mas i-expound pa ang usaping ito, I'd like to invite with us Mr. Kenneth Punas of Husay to facilitate our open discussion. And also joining the conversation are Sir Felix Arambulo and Ma'am Helen Arambulo from Isla de Kubo para ibahagi sa atin ang kanilang kwento tungkol sa proyekto. Sir Carl, Sir Ken, Sir Felix, and Ma'am Helen, magandang araw po. Thank you so much for being here with us. Everyone, we invite you all to share your thoughts and questions in the chat box or raise your hand if you'd like to ask your questions on mic. Don't be shy, sige na. This is your chance to interact directly with Sir Carl. Sir Ken, the floor is yours po.
Yep. Thanks everyone. No. Congratulations again to Carl and the team of Carl who has made my too big happen. So I'm Ken and I'll be facilitating yung open discussion natin ngayon. It could just be a kwentuhan again as mentioned by Carl. If you have any questions or something to share lang, feel free to share it on the chat box. No. Again, this is our opportunity to talk more about my too big. This is a kwentuhan that invites us no to look at spaces not just to as a space, but also to sit, rest, and reflect, and even allows us to rethink our relationship with space, water, and even with each other. So there are, I was writing and listening to the talk of Carl, and there are 3 points that really resonated with me while listening. One is that what we think of and see as a modern city is also a story of what was hidden. No, Carl mentioned about waterways, ecosystems, history, and communities that actually once they find how the city functioned, no, and my too big also invites us to experience the space differently, not as something that we pass through quickly, but something that we feel, question, and stay with, which relates to my final point na na-mention nga ni Carl, as a form of inquiry, allowing us nga to rethink what it means to be smart or what it means to be a future city. Does it really come out, or does it really come more from control or structure, or does it come from learning how to design with people, not just for them? So kasama natin ngayon ang mga taong naging bahagi ng work na ito, from the communities who live these realities, also to the artists who translated them into the space. So I'd like to start with Isla de Kubo, kay Sir Felix at Ma'am Helen, if okay lang po na mag-unmute po kayo para po sa aming katanungan. May Sir Felix, Ma'am Helen.
Hello po, Sir Felix, Ma'am
Hello po.
Helen.
Okay.
Alright. Hello. Magandang
Hello
hapon
po.
po, Sir Felix, Ma'am Helen. Naririnig niyo po ba kami?
Ayan.
Hi po, magandang
Hello po.
tanghali po.
Good
Magandang
afternoon
tanghali
po.
po.
Magandang tanghali po. Sir Felix at Ma'am Helen po, no? Para po masimulan natin itong discussion or kwentuhan po natin, no? Pwede po ba kayo mag-share kung ano si Study Kubo at ano po ang kasalukuyang sitwasyon ng mga mangingisda natin sa talim po?
Sir, yun pong sa aming paggagawa ng mga structure, ah doon, doon po sa mga napagawa namin, maganda po yung sa inyo. Kasi po, pagka ho kami gumagawa ng kubo, ang tinutulugan lang po namin dyan, yung tatayo lang kami ng tent, tulugan na po yun. Pero yung pong dyan sa inyo, ba, eh,
100% po. Comfortable po ang magagawa namin.
Ayan.
hanga nga
Salamat
po
po.
yung mga kasama namin. Kasi yung tulugan namin, maayos, komportable po kami lahat. Mm.
Mabuti
At
naman
ang
po.
isa po, doon po sa mga ginagawa naming mga kubo sa iba, yan po pinapakita lang po namin yung picture. Tapos yun po naman sa inyo, meron po talagang yung mga sukat, meron po talaga kayong mga architect.
Thank you
Tapos
po.
yun po naman sa gaano niyang mga materialis namin, yung mga pembo, talagang sa una po yan, bundok po kinukuha yan. Pinuputol, yan, tinutugpa ho, dinadala ho sa tabing tubig, binababad para po hindi siya bukbukin or yung magkaroon ng hayop.
Sir Felix, paano po kayo nagsimula sa paggawa ng mga kubo? Kasi di pa po
Hmm.
mangingisda po kayo.
Ganun po sir. Pagka po yung walang gawa, lipat po naman kami sa
Pangisda.
pangisda. Ganun po yun.
Ah,
Ang paggagawa ho naman, yan pagka ho nakatapos kami, 2 weeks, balik po naman kami sa isda. Yun po yan. Pagka walang gawa, talagang doon po kami.
mm. So usually po ang default niyo po ba ay pangingisda or mas ang main na kabuhayan niyo ay yung paggawa ng kubo?
Sa pangisda po sir, kasi hindi rin naman natin ano yung pangisda kasi seasonal. Yun po, meron pong maraming isda, may panahon na kukunti lang. Kaya po, dalawa po yung aming talagang kailangang pagkakitaan.
Yung ano po, 'di ba gaano katagal na po kayong nangingisda sa Laguna de Bay?
Ay, matagal na po sir. Siguro po mga 1990s nangingisda na po.
Mhm. May mga napansin po ba kayong pagbabago mula nung 1990s hanggang ngayon sa lawa?
Abay, ang laki ho ng pagbabago. Kasi po, nung mga elementary pa lang po ako, hindi pa po ako nangingisda nun. Ang tubig po ng lawa ng Laguna, para po kayo nasa beach, napakalinaw. Ang dami pong isda. Ang kwento pa ho sa akin ng lolo ko, kasi meron silang yung panghuli ng isda na baklad or yung skylab. Pag ho sila'y sumalo, ang gamit po nilang sasakyan, yung lunday lang. Pero puno po ng isda yun. Eh ngayon po, wala na. Talagang kukunti po inahuli. Pero sa ngayon po, seasonal talaga.
Ano po kaya yung mga dahilan ng pagbaba nung huli?
Yung nga po, kayang isang dahilan nga po, yung basura. Kasi po, sa pangingisda po namin dito sa bandang Laguna, pagka ho yung bumabaha, ang dami pong na ano doon sa aming lampat, puro basura. Kaya ho pagka yung tag-ulan, malakas ang baha, yun, labasan ng mga basura. Kitang-kita ho. May nakaagtaw, may nakalubog, yun nahuli sa lampat. Yun po yun.
Kamusta naman po yung sitwasyon sa Talim? Kasi nabanggit niyo po meron pong doon sa pinagkukunan natin na bundok ng Kawayan, meron pong ginagawang ano, windmill.
Opo, meron po. Eh, sabi ho, hindi na mapipigilan yun. Tuloy-tuloy na yun.
Kailan po nagsimula? Paano po siya nagsimula yung proyekto sa punto de vista niyo? Parang nakonsulta po ba kayo? Naihapag po ba sa inyo?
Eh, wala po. Kasi yung nung maan na lang namin, pagka ho kami nangingisda, kita po namin yung bundok na talagang kinakalbo na. Eh, meron pong isang, ano dito, yung alamenerong, ano,
Alamanerong Islander.
Hmm.
yun po ang isa sa tumutulig sa atin.
Ano po yung nararamdaman yung epekto ng pagkalbo ng bundok para di sa windmills?
Eh, naku sir, eh siguro talagang baha ang aabuti namin dito. Tapos yung tubig natin talagang lalabo. Kasi puro putik ho yung ano dito. Eh.
Kayo po, Miss Helen, ano po yung mga nararamdaman yung epekto ngayon nung
Sir,
construction?
ano sir, ngayon talagang maraming mga ahas at kobrang nagbababaan dito sa kabahayan dito. Actually sir, nung nakaraang linggo, ilan yung nakuwang king cobra yata yon? Dalawa pa. Malalaki talaga. Naglalabasan na sir.
Wala.
Yun,
Paano po yun?
nakakatakot din. Wala pa naman ditong anti-venom.
Naku. Paano niyo po, anong ginagawa niyo para maibsan yun yung pagbaba ng mga ahas? Lalo na kung may mga bata sa bahay, no? Parang
Yun nga
nakakatakot.
sir eh. Nakakatakot naman kasi sir talaga. Yung iba, pinuhuli na lang.
Gusto ko rin magtanong, Miss Helen, parang ano po yung parang ano po yung natutunan niyo tsaka ng mga manggagawa po dun sa proyekto? Parang, kasi alam ko kakaiba siya na usually ang ginagawa niyo mga kubo o kaya yung mga fish pen. Pero ngayon na parang
Outdoors.
installation ka, ano po yung kakaiba or ano yung natutunan niyo?
Sir, natutunan po namin dito kasi nagpapasalamat po kami at merong mga taong katulad nyo na binibigyang halaga po yung katulad dun yung po sa ginawa nating project ngayon. Nabanggit nyo po na dati yung Manila Bay, na nung araw ang kanilang hanap buhay ay pangingisda. Kumbaga, kino-commemorate nyo po yung hanap buhay nung araw para makita din ng henerasyon ngayon na ganun ang uri ng hanap buhay noong araw.
Na hanggang
Na
ngayon.
hanggang ngayon, medyo nakakalimutan na. Kaya malaking bagay po yung proyekto nyo.
Thank you po. Kayo po, Sir Felix, kasi di ba gumagawa kayo at ngayon parang mas may architectural plans, ganun, mas mga drawing na detalyado. Ano po yung natutunan niyo sa paggawa naman?
Pakiulit nga daw po, sir.
Ay, sorry. Ano po yung, kayo rin po, ano po yung natutunan niyo sa mga naging proyekto natin?
Yung nga po, yung mga architectural na yan, may sabi nga yung measurement, gano'n. Tapos yung pagpapaalala nga po ninyo doon sa mga dati nating trabaho na hanggang ngayon ginagawa pa rin natin, pinagkakabuhayan. So paano po kaya natin mapipigilan or maipagpapatuloy pa rin natin yung mga pangisda?
Naku,
Ano po,
magandang
sir?
tanong po yun. Hindi ko pa. Ay, nasimulan niyo na po bang gamitin yung lambat na ano natin, na binili natin?
Pinapagawa ko pa, sir.
Ginagawa po, sir.
Okay, okay. Sige po.
Apo.
Exciting.
Baka po itong Monday, baka pangisda na ulit.
Sige po. Yay, exciting.
Maraming salamat po, sir.
Sana may mahuli tayo.
Maraming salamat po, Sir Felix, no, at Ma'am Helen. Ang dami kayo po natutunan, no, yung sa sinabi pa lang po ni Ma'am Helen na commemorate or pag-alala. Ang dami po namin natutunan in terms of yung kaalaman, kung paano kayo gumagawa, umaangkop at nakikitungo, hindi lang sa tubig, kundi sa kalikasan po, no? So yung mga ganito,
Apo.
hindi lang siya simpleng kasanayan, kundi isa siyang parang uri ng kaalaman na hindi lang siya natututunan ng isang araw, kundi araw-araw na hinuhubog ito, no? Thinking of isip natin yung karanasan, yung pag-aalaga, at maging yung matagal natin na ugnayan sa mismong lugar, tubig man o lupa. Dahil dyan, may mga katanungan kay Carl sa inyong kwentuhan with Sir Felix and Ma'am Helen, no? So Carl, bago tayo magsimula, no, ano yung pinaka-special or memorable moment sa'yo collaborating or sa pakikipagtulungan mo with Isla de Kubo?
Actually, nung una ko silang nakatrabaho dun sa YouFind, hindi ko alam na mangingisda pala sila, Sir Felix. So, nalaman ko na lang nung nagtatrabaho na kami, nung ginagawa na namin. Tsaka parang na-observe ko rin na napaka-special nung technique, 'di ba, yung kunyari yung pagtatali. Ano yun parang hindi yun kayang gawin ng hindi mangingisda, parang ganun. Kaya rin nung sa YouFind, yung mga tali, yung regular white na nylon yung ginagamit nila, Sir Felix, kasi yun yung ginagamit nila sa pangisdaan. Naisip ko ngayon for dito sa Maytubig na maghanap ng lubid na kulay pula kasi gusto ko mas makita yung craftsmanship nung pagtatali. Kasi tingin ko parang itong mga techniques na to, baka parang baka hindi na to special para kila Sir Felix, pero para sa mga taga Maynila, para sa aming hindi na mga isda, ano yun, parang ang husay-husay nun. So gusto kong mas makita pa actually yung husay nung pagkakatali. Yun. Isa yun sa mga naalala ko. Kaya rin na-inspire din ako sa una naming collaboration na gawing paksa talaga nung pangalawang version nung proyekto, yung pangingisda mismo. Dahil nga sa pagbabahagi nila Sir Felix sa buhay nila at sa karanasan nila. At nag-enjoy din ako mag-research actually tungkol sa pangingisda. I mean, actually hindi ako mahilig kumain ng isda. Pero mahilig ako sa kultura at yung na i-inspire ako sa kultura na sa paligid ng pangingisda, yung iba't ibang mga gears, iba't ibang mga lambat, mga paraan ng pangingisda, iba't iba yung lambat para sa kung huhuli ka ng hipon or ng sa dagat or sa lawa. As in, ang dami-daming kultura na actually hindi masyadong nado-document or hindi rin masyadong na-appreciate. Uh, and ang dami ring kinakaharap ng mga mangingisda ngayon. Like, yung isa naming kampanya ay yung 15 kilometers from the coast na dapat sa mga maliliit na mangingisda yun, hindi yun dapat sa commercial fisheries. Yun pa lang yung parang nasa batas na yun pero kailangan pa rin ipaglaban kasi parang meron pa ring mga gahaman na gustong kunin yun. At hindi lang yun kabuhayan eh, parang masisira rin yung kalikasan, wala ka na maipapamana sa susunod na henerasyon. So, kaya rin ako interesado doon sa bahaging pangkultura ng pangingisda. Kahit hindi mismo doon sa isda mismo. Pero yung ano ba yung nakukuha nating sensibilidad mula sa, kunyari, sa pamamalengke na pag namalengke ka, yung mga isda ay galing talaga sa malapit lang, hindi yung imported na isda. Yung pag namalengke ka, hindi pa siya nakastyro sa supermarket, kundi as in, buhay pa siya na isda at alam mong yung mga nagbebenta sa iyo ay sila mismo yung humuli ng isda na yun. May ibang ganung, iba yung kultura na yun eh. Kahit nung tumitingin ako ng mga litrato ng palengke noong 1970s hanggang ngayon, parang grabe yung ang lalaki ng mga nasa palengke noon, parang pang aquarium, pang museum yung ano, yung mga specimen. Actually, kahit naman hanggang ngayon, marami sa mga marine scientists natin ay nakakahanap ng specimen sa palengke. So, yun. So, para sa akin, yung ganong kultura na may espasyo, may palengke, paano ba nakakapagbenta, paano nabubuhay, paano tinatransport, paano yung specific na parang architectural or design ideas na nandun sa kabuhayan na yun, yung kabuhayang mas malapit sa tubig, mas malapit sa kalikasan, paano siya, ano yung kulturang nahuhubog niya, anong klaseng mga tao yung nahuhubog niya, parang ganun. So, interested ako doon. So, lahat na ngayon parang nakuha ko just by um, listening sa mga kwento nila, Sir Felix, nung nagko-construction kami ng unang U5. Yan. Kaya gusto ko rin magpasalamat kila Sir Felix. At kahit
Maraming
sa mga
salamat
iba
din
pa
po, sir.
And so, thank you, Carl, no? Nasagot mo na mostly nung questions natin sa chat. That was really well-rounded, no, from your inspiration, looking at the space, and then how it affects, modernization today. I think if there's one question that I really want to raise, no, to close and to wrap up this artist talk by Carl Castro, no, a lot of spaces even now say that we are an open space, no? We are open as a space. But you would really see some observations na even if they claim as open, people still don't feel free to use them, or sometimes may mga rules. Sometimes hindi ka pwedeng magtagal, hindi ka pwedeng humiga, hindi kayo pwedeng mag-gather. Di ba? Which is, totally different in the context of My Too Big and the You Find projects. So if there's one advice would you give to people who want to create spaces that are truly open, not just in form, but in how people actually feel and use them, what would you provide with them?
It's a very complex question, pero ano ba? Cultural shift talaga yung magkaroon ng public spaces. Lalo ko siya nararamdaman, and I'm sure maraming magsasabi nito na tuwing mupunta ako sa ibang bansa, nararamdaman ko yung may ginhawa just by may sidewalk, alam mo yun, yung hindi ka masasagasaan or yung gumagana yung trend, yung mga ganun. Parang ang daming may park na pwede kang puntahan. Ang dami-daming mga maliliit na bagay na kumbaga bare minimum yun eh sa buhay na meron kang espasyo na dito talaga parang wala. At parang nagugulat ako rin na kaya natin siyang tiisin kasi parang normal na sa atin. So, ang nakikita ko sa pag-aaral ng kasaysayan ay nahubog yung kultura na yun dahil sa mahabang-mahabang ilang daang taon na ng kultura ng pagtitiis. Dahil hindi tayo lagi tayo yung sinasakop, lagi tayo yung alalay, lagi tayo yung minamaltrato at kailangan natin mabuhay, hindi naman tayo pwedeng magpatalo, di ba? Or di ba, maggape. So, tinitiis natin yung mga ganong kondisyon. Pero sa sa pagtagal ng panahon, paglipas ng panahon na hinahayaan natin yun, tinitiis natin yun, nagiging kultura na natin yung pagtitiis. Kumbaga, hindi na tayo naniniwala na pwede pa tayo magkaroon ng mga ganong bagay. Kasi wala talaga yun hindi yun mangyayari dito. Hindi tayo magkakaroon ng maayos na transportation, hindi tayo magkakaroon ng mababang presyo, hindi tayo magkakaroon ng libreng edukasyon na dekalidad. Mga ganong ka-basic na bagay, feeling natin, ano na siya, parang kaalwanan na yon. Kumbaga parang pangmayaman lang yun. Or hindi siya pang atin. Yun. So, sa akin, panahon at yung isang malaking bagay na kasi yung napansin ko rin nung una kong ginawa yung You Find at actually kahit itong May Tubig, nung una yung mga tao parang hindi pa alam kung anong gagawin nila, like pwede ba siyang lapitan kasi 'di ba installation siya, so usually titingnan lang nila, hindi nila pwedeng hawakan kasi ang art hindi mo pwedeng hawakan. Tapos kahit meron siyang instructions, parang magtatanong yung mga tao kung anong gagawin doon. Tapos, it took mga ilang linggo para magsimulang gamitin siya ng mga tao. Kasi naninibago pa sila, nakikibagay, parang nakikiramdam ka sa bagong espasyo. Tapos, meron ding mga naging problema sa governance, like kahit na sinabi kong 24/7 po siyang bukas, kahit sino pwedeng gumamit, pwedeng matulog. Minsan, sinisita ng mga guard yung mga natutulog, tapos may nagsasabing, bakit may time limit ba yung pagpapahinga? Parang gano'n. So, merong ganong, kumbaga, lahat ng tao kailangan mag-adjust sa ideyang bago pa lang sa kanila. Na yung kunyari, yung idea na magkaroon ng ganong espasyo, yung idea na pwede ka matulog in public at hindi siya nakakahiya. 'Di ba? Parang natutulog lang tayo in public pag nakakatulog tayo dahil pagod na pagod na tayo sa bus or ganyan sa jeep. Pero wala naman talagang pwesto kahit 'di ba, kahit meron tayong poblasyon, kahit meron tayong park, hindi bawal di matulog doon, 'di ba? Pero ngayong gumawa tayo ng espasyo na pwede talaga magpahinga yung mga tao na may duyan pa, hindi mo alam kung paano siya gagamitin ng mga tao. So, yun. So, I think, ang nakikita kong gusto kong mangyari ay unti-unti talaga siyang iteration na i-testing kung ano ba yung gusto nating makita talaga sa mga public spaces natin, ano yung mga pwedeng gawin, paano ba masasanay yung mga tao. Like, kunyari, nasanay rin tayo na nagkakalat dahil nasanay tayo na merong pumupulot, may tagapulot, may basurero. Pero kunyari dito sa Japan, kung nasan ako, kahit walang basurahan, bubulsa mo yung basura mo dahil walang basurahan. At pag nagtapon ka ng basura, isi-segregate mo talaga. Parang ganun. May ganung, kumbaga, merong collective understanding na kailangan hindi ka magtapon ng kalat. Ay, hindi ko naman sinasabing perfecto dito at walang nagkakalat kasi meron pa rin naman. Pero ibang-iba sa atin na, kunyari sa fast food, pag kumain ka, even mo lang yung pinagkainan mo dahil alam mong may taong ang trabaho ay maglinis nung pinagkainan mo. Habang dito, kailangan mo siyang ilagay dun sa isalansan yung mga pinagkainan mo dahil may lagayan. Walang maglilinis para sa'yo. In fact, pwede kang kumuha ng tissue para linisin yung lugar mo, pero parang ganun. So yun, so tingin ko rin, ano yun, parang offshoot din siya nung kultura na merong katulong, merong alalay. Na again, sa atin, ninormalize na natin na may katulong at may alalay. Um, Yun. So, ganun din sa public spaces, parang kailangan hindi tayo mawalan ng loob. Kasi kunyari, itong mga ganitong eksperimento, syempre marami ring heartbreaks na hindi inaalagaan ng mga tao yung espasyo or hindi siya ginagamit ng mga tao or walang panahon para gamitin siya. Pero, ganun bago pa lang siya Pero over time, baka masanay yung mga tao na may ganitong espasyo. Baka matutunan din ng mga tao na alagaan siya. Or baka rin kailangan bigyan sila ng ano ba, ng role, ng puwang dun sa pag-manage dun sa espasyo para maging kanila yung espasyo, hindi siya espasyo ng ibang tao na sasamantalahin mo lang kaya parang kung ano yung gusto mong gawin dahil hindi naman yun iyo. Pero pag sa'yo na yung espasyo, di ba parang wawalisan mo na siya, linisin mo siya, alagaan mo na siya, i-repair mo na siya. Parang ganun. So, isa siyang nakikita ko na cultural shift siya na kailangan gawin na which necessarily takes time. Hindi siya agad-agad mangyayari. Hindi rin siya magagawa in one exhibition, alam mo yun. Pero hopefully, mag-start siya ng questioning na, oo nga, no, bakit nga ba wala tayong gantong espasyo? Or ano bang pwedeng gawin para magkaroon ng mga espasyong tunay na bukas, na mapagbigay, mapagkalinga, at also mapagtanong, mga espasyong mapagtanong. I think mahalaga yun. Para hindi lang sapat yung nako-comfort tayo ng espasyo, kundi napapag-isip din tayo dapat at napapagtanto natin yung mga bagay-bagay. And saan ba natin nagagawa yun? Kahit nga sa eskwelahan or sa simbahan, minsan hindi natin nagagawa yun dahil nakaka-stress na yung pace ng mga bagay. So, saan natin gagawin yun? 'Di ba? Minsan sa bahay hindi natin magawa yun. So, yun. So, saan natin gagawin yung mga bagay na yun? Kailangan magkaroon. Kasi feeling ko pag walang ganun, walang pagbabago mangyayari sa lipunan. Kasi walang pagbabago nangyayari, hindi natin napapagtanto ang mga bagay-bagay. Yun lang naman.
Yeah,
Ang
maraming
dami
salamat,
sinabi.
Carl. Bigyan diin ko lang yung nasabi mo kanina, espasyong mapagtanong, no? I think that's a beautiful way to sum it all up. And then even yung tanong na kailangan nating mas itanong pa, like anong gusto nating makita sa mga public spaces natin today. I think that's a beautifully rounded kind of response to this question, no? So Carl, I think just this last lang, no? So maliban sa installation mo sa Binild, may iba pa bang mga platform or even mga publications ka ba na maaaring share in the future sa ating mga kasama sa kwentuhan na ito kung saan nila mas may ma-access pa or makakapag-engage sa Maytubig?
Okay. So unang-una sa pag pumunta po kayo sa Maytubig, meron pong zine. May maliit na pahayagan na akong ginawa na kung saan itong mga diniscuss ko ay mas napalawig ko pa. Um, Makikita niyo yun sa on-site, sa installation, and meron din po dun sa exhibit namin sa UP, sa College of Social Work and Community Development. Bukod dun, may plano ko ring mag-post ng ilang bahagi ng pahayagan na yun sa aking Substack. So, yung link po ay nasa linktree ko sa Instagram ko. Bukod doon, yun po, nasa Instagram din po ako at sa Facebook. Pwede nyo pong tingnan yung mga pinaggagawa ko doon at yung mga pinaggagawa ko na dati. Nasa YouTube din po ako. Inianyayahan ko rin po kayong mag-follow sa Concerned Artists of the Philippines at marami rin po kaming ginagawa. At inaanyayahan ko rin kayong sumali dahil pag may gusto kayong gawin, pagtulungan natin. Yan. Yun. Bukod doon, gusto ko rin pong anayahan ng lahat na tingnan ng iba pang mga gawa sa Benilde Open. So, 10 po kaming artists na grantee. So, iba't iba po yung proyekto. Although maraming mga proyekto na ganun din na may concern sa baha, may concern sa politika, may concern sa mga kailangan baguhin sa kultura at sa lipunan. So, interesting po yun, yung iba-ibang punto de vista ng iba't ibang artist. So, maganda pong tingnan yun. And then, ano pa ba? Ah, Substack. Yun na, sige, parang ang dami na.
Maraming salamat, Carl, no? And also to Sir Felix and Ma'am Helen, no? This is a really good discussion and sharing artists and the partners. Usually we only see the artist, but this one, it's really a whole ecosystem that has made My Too Big happen, no? And really serve as a powerful reminder for all of us na again, My Too Big and placemaking as a form of inquiry allows us to see na yung mga cities na nakikita natin, it's not just a city, or it hasn't always been like that as a city, no? It is shaped by a lot of things. And even if marami ng mga bagay yung hidden, forgotten, or nakalimutan na, it's still there. No. So hopefully after this conversation, or if you happen to visit my too big installation at the Benilde Art and Design Campus, I hope ma-embody pa natin yung sinabi nga ni Carl na espasyong mapagtanong kind of lens na we start to notice more, to question more, and to think about what kind of spaces we want. Ano nga ba yung mga gusto nating makitang public spaces to be part of where we live in moving forward. So with that, thank you very much, everyone. I'll hand it over to Romar. Romar.
Yan. Grabe, grabe. Ang daming learnings from that. Thank you so much to our resource speakers for sharing your insights and stories with us. Thank you so much, everyone. And of course, maraming salamat to Mr. Karl Castro for generously sharing your time, stories, and creative journey with us today. To all our attendees, thank you for being such an engaging and wonderful audience. We truly appreciate your presence. Again, we invite everyone to visit the Benilde Open exhibit and continue supporting our local artist and creative community. Di ko na patatagalin ito dahil lagpas lunch na. At so that wraps up our program. This has been Roma Arquitola, your host for today. Maraming salamat and have a great weekend, everyone. Paalam!
Thank you.
Salamat po.
Thank you din po.
Paalam.
Paalam po.